Think gadget reviews, news, and all about it.
Vodafone Smart Prime 6 review. Do you care what brand socks you wear? Would you consider a personalized number plate? Do you make fashion decisions? The Vodafone Smart Prime 6 probably isn't for you. But if you want a lot of phone for almost no money, this is the place to be. For £79 without a contract you get a Moto G grade screen, great battery life and 4G. That's up to £30 less than the Moto E, while earning you a bigger, sharper screen. Where do we sign up? And that's where we hit the one major snag. As you might have guessed, you need to sign with Vodafone to grab this bargain. Shades of grey. Not put off yet? Well, Vodafone has another crack at it with the design. The back of the Vodafone Smart Prime 6 is a grey expanse of blandorama, while the front seems to have taken one too many cues from the early Learning Center catalog, bunging childish-looking gigantic light-up soft keys below the screen. Just don't expect to show it off and have others going green, and you should get on fine with the Vodafone Smart Prime 6, though. After all, Microsoft and Motorola cut out dedicated soft keys completely, as they add to the cost, in more expensive phones than this too. And while the back is plain, at least it's not flat-out ugly. Had I not seen the Vodafone logo on the back, I could imagine another brand asking for well over £100 for this phone too. While it has a thin pull-off rear cover, it feels pretty sturdy. Not least because it weighs 155 grams. Vodafone hasn't just cobbled these phones together around the back of its high street branches. The Vodafone Smart Prime 6 is actually made by TCL, the company behind Alcatel One Touch phones, as well as about 3.5 zillion others in native China. And before you turn your nose up, everything's made in China these days. Even iPhones. HD at an SD price. One of the hardware highlights is the screen. The Vodafone Smart Prime 6 has a 5 in 1280 by 720 pixel display, very similar to what you'll find on much more expensive phones like the Motorola Moto G and Sony's Xperia M4 Aqua. It's slightly brighter than the Moto G2, and loses less brightness when you view it from an extreme angle. Why would you? Well, you wouldn't, but it's a sign that Vodafone hasn't simply packed the Smart Prime 6 with a rubbish screen to keep the price down. Color saturation is fine as well, and while there seems to be a slight yellow, warm cast to the white balance, it's kinda pleasant. That Vodafone has managed to fit this screen in a £79 phone seems like a minor miracle until you realize, oh right, it's such a bargain because it's designed to lure you into using Vodafone. This phone is bait. And not in the Urban Dictionary sense. Vodafone Milkshake Taste Test. The software is Vodafone flavored. But not offensively so. While things like the Tesco Huddle to radically alter the Android UI so that Tesco's red, white and blue lives in its marrow, here Vodafone has basically taken Android Lollipop and chucked a few Vodafone apps on it. They take you to a few different Vodafone online services, nothing you'd want to use unless you're a total novice. Although for smartphone newborns, the Tips app might come in handy. These apps are annoyingly pinned right to the top of the apps menu to ensure maximum visibility, annoyance. But, unexpectedly, I'm actually able to delete them in my Vodafone Smart Prime 6. Assume you won't be able to, though, in case that's a foible of the review sample. Is there another way around the junk? Well, you can't put all the Vodafone gubbins in a folder you then train your eyes to ignore. If you install the Google Now UI app, you can get pretty much exactly the same look and feel without the pinned Vodafone apps. Insert victory dance here. The one other custom bit the Vodafone Smart Prime 6 adds is that when you swipe from the leftmost home screen, it boots up Flipboard. This is a fancy news compiling app, nicking articles from the web and arranging them into a smooth scrolling feed. A bit like HTC Blink feed. But less slick. It is also so subtly applied it took me a couple of days to even realize it was there. Vodafone really hasn't messed with Android Lollipop much, and that's a good thing. Snapdragon in the house. There's also enough power on tap here to do more or less whatever you want. For £79 you might expect a phone that can't really handle fancy 3D games. And as recent as last year you'd have been right. But the Vodafone Smart Prime 6 fixes that. It has the Snapdragon 410 CPU, a quad-core 1.2 GHz processor used in some phones costing £200 or more. It's not high-end but it's no slug either. Test favorites of mine Dead Trigger 2 and Asphalt 8 both work great on the phone, playing as well as they do on a phone double the price. If you're feeling brave you can even try turning on the graphical effects you get with a top-end phone. Some mobile games have PC-like graphics settings, and it won't break down in tears. But generally the frame rate sacrifice isn't worth it. The 5-inch screen is great for a bit of gaming too, big enough to let you get hold of touchscreen controls without leaving you with a postage stamp size picture to actually play on. Even the storage does fine by me. The included 8 GB isn't a lot, but as there's almost 4 GB of free storage when you first start up the phone you have enough room to fit in some games and photos before it starts begging for a microSD card. There's a slot under the rear cover. Got patience? Is performance perfect? Not quite. While there's no constant interface or keyboard lag that hangs over the Vodafone Smart Prime 6 like a cloud, it's not immune to the odd geriatric moment. A pause that goes on way too long, given how fast the phone is at times, strikes every now and then. This seems to happen more when other things are going on in the background, such as an app download or, worse, installation. It comes across as though some process is quietly crashing in the background. Fingers crossed it'll get fixed, but either way it's certainly not a terminal issue. As expected, the Vodafone Smart Prime 6 marginally outperforms the Moto G4 G2 Gen in the Geekbench 3 benchmark too, with 1,410 points. Not bad for £79, right? The Grain Factory. There are a few little bits that bring the Vodafone Smart Prime 6 back down to earth. The speaker is on the quiet side and brings pretty uninspiring sound quality. No surprise there. The camera is fairly basic too. You get an 8-megapixel camera on the back, with a flash, and a 720p selfie cam. After a day out shooting in London, I opened up the Vodafone Smart Prime 6's snaps half expecting a horror show. But for a phone of £79 it can actually take some surprisingly good shots. There are a few particular elements that are a bit better than I anticipated. First, light sources don't bleed all over your shots like coffee spilt on kitchen roll. Exposure and white balance are often a bit off, but generally not too far. And while dynamic range isn't going to impress, the HDR mode actually does a great job, increasing detail in the darkest and lightest bits without killing contrast or making it look as though you're seeing the photo through the eyes of someone who has taken something. I tested the Vodafone Smart Prime 6 alongside the Sony Xperia M4 Aqua, and while the latter phone costs 3 times the price, it has more issues creating consistent-looking images. The Prime's shots might never make your jaw drop, but its hit rate is actually surprisingly high. Especially if you embrace HDR. Now for the bad bits. Even daylight photos are coated with a fine layer of grain. It's not that ugly, but means photos never look entirely clean if you view them on, say, a 21-inch screen. The Vodafone Smart Prime 6 is also prone to a few different kinds of lens distortion. When that means you get cool-looking lens flare off the rotor blades of a helicopter, that's pretty cool. But it's not so hot when, in tricky high-contrast lighting, the black areas of a photo start to look purple,